6th of February, no, well, I'm looking at the 6th of February 25 council by-elections. Now, council by-elections are a very important democratic tool because we only get to vote every 5 years in a general election. So, meanwhile, in between, if you're very, if you want to give your democratic view, really you only get chances at council by-elections, council elections, that sort of thing. So, 6th of February 25, there were 6 council elections in the UK, and they were all in England, I think. And again, it's shown the rise of reform because the reform done well in all of them, or took the seat from somebody else. And personally, I think we should be voting on one single issue, which I think nothing else matters, basically. Um, we're not going to have an economy if you think we're heading towards anarchy. Um, you know, Anarchy, you don't need to worry about economy, health service, things like that. Or you think they're left or right and we're going to be a utopia on this issue, especially because of this issue, where the native British natives become a minority, basically, and we become a third world majority, third and second world, East Europe as well, and Russia and that. So let's look back at the February 6 results. Here's the first one. Reform gain from Labour. So this is good because it's a Labour area. Rochester, I think it's down in the southeast, so they're quite close to where the dinghies land, I suppose. Reform just straight in, 36%. Labour down 22%, 32%. Tories down 6% to 20%. So a solid Labour place. Reform have won it. So that's good news, yeah. On to the next one. A Lib Dem hold. There was no reform there for some reason, I don't know why, but the Tories were up 10%. Lib Dems were down 7%. I don't know what's going on there. That's Wokingham council by-election. So, I mean, Lib Dem and the Greens there, their vote is holding on throughout the country. Labour are way down, say 26, 25%. I don't know why Lib Dem and Green are holding. Lib Dems, I think, are just naive natives or whatever. But the Greens, they might be getting some who are angry at the thing about Israel and that, Labour Keir's stand on that. So they might be getting some sort of boost from across the country. I don't know, actually. I think it's going to be temporary until they get their own candidates up. There's 4 independent candidates in Westminster in the last election. They may be forming a group, and they may be just a sign of things to come, mainly from Labour MP areas. They'll all lose their seats. Jess Phillips, Rick Cooper, Lisa Nandy. Some of them will lose them to Reform, but others will lose them to new independent candidates who a big chunk of their communities like, a big chunk of their constituents. I think that's how it's going to go. And in fact, in Birmingham, that lawyer who, the 2 guys that got arrested for the Manchester airport thing, they took on as a lawyer first, but for some reason they sacked him about 2 weeks later and took on that other lawyer from Scotland. I don't know why. I know that in that video where the lawyer was saying he was representing them, he touched her legs, and I don't think that they appreciated that very much. I don't know, and maybe we don't know if they found him incompetent or whatever. We don't know. But anyway, he's just announced with another activist in Birmingham that there's an independent group going to be sitting, standing at every council election in Birmingham next. I don't know if it's this year, and that's probably all Labour areas basically. So all those Labour councillors have a good chance of losing their seat to quote independent group candidates that this man endorses and his friend, the activist friend. So we don't know what they're going to look like or whatever. It's up to you. We don't live in a free society, free speech society. We can't presume things. We can presume things about everything else or predict, but we can't predict using our logic or whatever. We can't predict, we're not allowed. Yeah, so that Green thing may be temporary, that's what I was saying, that Green. Maybe the Green vote will crash and they'll be left with natives, basically. But then, once the natives see how 5 or 10 years' time, how Britain's going to go, they might desert the Greens as well, you know. So, because I think the Greens in Germany, they usually have two co-leaders. One was male, one's female. Or not always. Maybe the male doesn't get there, but one female and one they, however. I think the German lady co-leader in Germany said something like all North Africans whose asylum has been rejected need to go home or something, which was a bit of a shock from the Greens. You know, a Green anywhere saying that, you know, I mean, it's uplifting, but in Germany you need to vote AfD, you need to protest vote on the single issue, forget everything else. Electoral system doesn't work because we should be able to vote on this issue, you know, in a referendum, quarterly referendum like in Switzerland. Yeah, so I'm talking here a lot of times. I don't know how their vote's holding up. I can't explain it. Or the Greens, for that matter. Well, like I said, they may be getting a bounce vote from people who are temporarily using them until they get quote an independent group set up. That seems to be voted along ethnic lines, maybe you could say, I don't know, or R lines, you know, Lives Matter or an umbrella group. I mean, that group in Birmingham, they're calling themselves the independent group. Is that because they don't agree in a lot of things, you know? Why don't they all just act, it looks as if they're going to just act together in certain policies. I don't actually know. Same as the independent MPs and who are, they said they were going to become a group in January. They haven't yet. They've all voted in block in a lot of things, I would guess, but probably they'll vote against that cousin marriage thing. Anti-cousin marriage thing that I think it was the Tories tried to put through. Of course, Labour were against it anyway, so it didn't matter. An independent MP made a groundbreaking thing in favour of it, or at least it was implied favourability. Wasn't against it. Yeah, because and he was pointing out that in Dubai or whatever they do genetic testing and things like that, so that because you marry your cousin, there's a good chance of recessive faulty genes getting together, you know, that sort of thing. So let's look into the next one. It's a Labour hold, and the vote is down 20%, and Reform is a newcomer, and it comes in new at 26%, nearly 27%. Labour down to 37%. So Tories held there as well, 17%. So don't know where that vote's come from. The Greens down 5%, Lib Dems down. So I think that's a solid Labour place. So that's Gillingham South. That's down in the southeast as well. So it's a Labour hold, but not going bad for the Britain Predicts model here. So they had a prediction. They said it would be Labour 34%, Reform 29%. So next one, Conservative gain from Labour. Baxenden, that's in Hyndburn. Conservatives, they're down 13%, but they have 35%. Reform are in at 32%, so they're brand new. Labour are down 22% to 29%. So there it almost looks like they went from Labour to Reform, quite a lot of them. Greens 3.2%, they didn't gain anything. So that's really great news. Hyndburn Reform doing well again. And then the final one, Reform gain from Conservatives. So this is probably a Tory area. Reform come in at 45%. Lib Dems go up 15%, so Lib Dems done well. Tories down 30% to 17%. Labour down 7% to 3.2%. So it was a Tory area. So that's really good. Tendering council. So let's see what Britain Elect says about this. This is a Substack thing. The polls paint a poor picture for first past the post. The most popular party right now is on 25%. The third most popular party is on 21%. General election predictions on these numbers are more risk than reward. Personally, I think Reform are going to go at 40%, 45%, 50%. I mean, as many natives, whatever the percent is. And of course, that's going to go down each year. Meanwhile, the other groups are going to vote identity parties, if they can, especially in concentrated areas like they have already in East London, the Aspire Party, a nice Anglo word. Two were also expected to be held by Labour. Two were expected to go to Reform. So Tenring is Clacton, so that's Nigel Farage's town. A clean win for Reform as they take a Tory seat in Nigel Farage's own backyard. But note the under and over performances of Tory and Lib Dem candidates. So yeah, the Lib Dem done very well. So that was probably Labour people. But some Labour probably went to Reform as well. So Reform actually... Oh no, this is their prediction. The left is this Twitter channel's prediction. The right is what happened. So they got Reform spot on. They didn't get the Tories right. So somebody switched to Lib Dems, probably. The Greens were zero, by the looks of it. Gillingham was a Labour hold. Britain predicts thought it would be 33% Labour. It was 37%. So that was a bit higher. They thought Reform would be 29%, they were 27%. I mean, the turnouts in these places are really low, 17%, 22%, but they tend to go the way that even if 80% of them would have voted, you know. If you get a council by-election coming up, there's a good chance vote on it and vote Reform if you're worried about this one issue, the issue. So there we go. What happened in Wokingham? Easy Lib Dem hold. Yeah. Tories were up quite a bit all the same. There was no Reform for some reason. Maybe they stood aside so that Tories would do better. And Rochester confounded the model. Reform exceeded expectations in Rochester, topping the polling award. They thought Labour on course to win. So, I mean, they got the Labour vote sort of right, but they didn't get the Reform one right. It was far higher. They thought it'd be 28%. It was 37%. They thought Tories 24%. It was 20%. So, and in Hyndburn, they thought they would go for Reform. It was the Tories, not Reform, who robbed home. Yeah, that was a surprise. They thought it'd be Reform. They got the figure quite right. They got the Labour figure exactly right. But Labour were a lot higher. I don't know why that is. Maybe the Labour people were voting, or the Green people were voting Tory or something like that. You know, because I think that's going to go on now. People voting tactically. I mean, the Lib Dem votes vanished as well. And the Tories won it. So that's how the council by-elections. If you've got one coming up and you're worried about a single issue, then vote Reform. As a protest vote, an Overton window shift. Reform are not very good on this issue. They want net zero on it when it should be gross zero, really. If you think we're heading for anarchy, that is because of this. Labour and I think we're heading for utopia, and the Tories to a degree as well, yes. And now for something existential. Is Labour a working class party? It depends how you look at it. Labour support among council and social household is a world away from what it was in 1997. According for the fact Labour did 8 points worse nationally in 2024 when compared to 97, that fact is still has currency. So this is people in council social housing tenants at elections. In 1987, 64% were Labour, and for Keir Starmer it was 43%. Let's look at any funny. That's interesting. Reform 20% of council social housing tenants voted reform at the local election, at the general election last year. So that's quite a big surprise. So for Tory reform it was 32% of social and housing tenants. Lib Dems, there's a drop down from social and housing. The Greens you've got now as well, all the same. Quite a lot of Greens there. But for Labour it's went from 64% in 97, 47% in 2010, and 2024 it was 43%. So it's not down much from the last 14 years. The big drop was 97 to 2010. And that was a big increase to Tories then. Yeah, so that's quite interesting. Labour doing 21 points worse among a demographic that, yes, takes up a smaller share of the voting pie than it used to. It has long been reliant on views. What won it for Labour in 24 was not its traditional base, but its new one, the mortgage owners, the steady as she goes voters from the Toryism of Liz Truss in 2022, was an irrevocable awakening. So that's what they're saying. I would say it's all going to go weird now because of a single issue. I think natives are basically going to vote reform as a protest vote, as a Overton window shift until someone better on this issue comes along on that side. But first of all, you've got to make it unacceptable what the Tories and Labour want for, and even Reform actually, on this issue. Reform are being made out the baddies on this issue, so you've got to vote for them. But I think actually George Galloway's party are better because he's against mass migration. So, but people think of his vote as the Muslim party basically. So you can't vote for them because of that. Just because of David Lammy, I don't know what he thinks of them, but he's against reform. He'll call them the N-word, I would think, things like that. So if he's thinking the other way, then okay, you've got to vote for reform then on this issue to get the message home. Not because you're the N-word, because we're heading for anarchy, in my opinion. So that's what I think. Yeah, because there's going to be a lot of new parties, I think, that are identity parties that natives can't relate to. And does that not make them more akin to what groups saw as purity of the group, etc.? Is that not more the way? Anyway, that's all I've got for that just now. So this is Britain Elects on Twitter. I'm not a big fan of Britain Elects, but there's only two that really do the council election results.